Hey, voice teacher, I've got a question for you. What is your voice teaching business name? I'm super curious. Do you use your name in your business name, or do you put sing with in front of it? Well, in this episode, we're talking about the differences between using your name as part of your brand and not using your name, whether one is better than the other, the pros and cons of each, and how I personally came up with the name The Whole Voice for my teaching brand. It's a fun story. So if you've been curious about naming your teaching business, you're going to love today's episode. This podcast is for professional voice teachers to answer the question, how do I grow my teaching business and even break out of that one-on-one lesson model so that I can reach and teach who I want whenever I want. I'm your host, Allie Tyler, voice teacher of over a decade and marketing and business coach for fellow voice teachers. Welcome to the Voicepreneur Podcast. Hello, lovely voice teacher. Welcome to another episode of the Voicepreneur Podcast. I hope that you are enjoying your life, enjoying yourself, enjoying your business. This is a really, really fun topic, and this actually came directly from a voice teacher client. She asked me in a session how I came up with the name The Whole Voice and whether or not she should change her business name. And this is, I think this is a really fun conversation because that's really generally what it is. It's a conversation. It's not, as always, a right or wrong thing. I'm not going to sit here and say, you need to change your name and this is the way to be profitable in your business. Like, that is not what this is about. But I will say that part of having a conversation around something where you are comparing, having a name that has your name in it and having a name that doesn't have your name in it, this is really a cool debate, basically. You're like debating or making a decision within yourself what feels most aligned for you right now, and then maybe what feels most aligned for you in the future, because you can absolutely change. So, I was Allie Tyler Music Studio for 8 years, for 8 years before I switched to The Whole Voice. So you can definitely make switches. You can totally make changes. You evolve. And since you evolve, your business is going to evolve too. And that's something we can always be relieved by, I think. I think a lot of us think we need to marry these things, like our brand name and the colors and the offers. Like once we do it, it's done. I don't know. I don't feel like creatives live like that, Like we like to create, we like to grow, we like to do things and explore things and express ourselves in new ways. And if you are running a business, then oftentimes that business is going to reflect your own growth. So you don't need to get married to a name. You can always change your name in the future. And what's nice is that you can also create a name that holds space for your future growth. So that's actually a really great place to start, is looking at the difference between having a name that is yours and then having a name that is, let's say, The Whole Voice, right? It's its own entity, and considering the growth factor in both of those options. So that's actually what prompted me to change my name from Allie Tyler Music Studio to The Whole Voice, is that I realized that Allie Tyler Music Studio was stunting my creative potential with my business. And it's very interesting to look back on the various different names that went in between those two names. For a while, my Instagram account was called Tune In with Allie because I really didn't know what I was. I knew I didn't want to be Allie Tyler Music Studio, but I didn't have the name The Whole Voice yet. And I was super obsessed with this phrase, tuning inward and tune in. And I actually own those domains to this day. I don't know what they are, but I felt like they were something. And maybe you have that experience too. I find that a lot of us, we get drawn to words or phrases or, just things that feel like, ooh, that could be something. That is something. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a blog or a YouTube channel, or maybe it's a product or a program or a method or a formula. We don't really know a lot of the times. And that's kind of the fun about naming things, getting really connected to our creative muse, finding our identity in all of this, because that's really what it is that we are naming a business in relation to our identity and our role as a teacher and a business owner and a leader, right? Like it's all connected. So it became interesting, at least for me, in my scenario when I wanted to grow and evolve and do all these things, Allie Tyler Music Studio was not allowing me to do that. So I essentially got obsessed with this idea of tuning inward. It didn't really transpire into anything, but it did eventually lead me towards my brand values and what I wanted to stand for and the whole voice. And the whole voice was I'll never forget the moment that I thought of this. It was totally like a download, right? It was like a total just whoop, there it is, like the whole voice. But it really came from a very methodical process. I was in the middle of figuring out who I was and what type of teacher I was and what tuning inward was and, all of the stuff, right? My brand. And I was looking at the various different things that I was teaching inside of my studio. So breathing and the importance of mindfulness and awareness and alignment and our thoughts and expression and musicality and artistry. And I literally put these all on flashcards, these different categories. And I started looking at the themes within these categories, noticing that the categories ended up being body, mind, and soul. Very original. But it got me thinking, man, that's so interesting. The voice, it's like the whole picture. It's like the whole thing. It's like the whole voice. The whole voice. There it is. So that came from a lot of assessment in what I was teaching, what I was all about, what I stand for, what types of students I wanted to attract in. That's where the whole voice came from. I also really personally love the word whole because it has allowed me to expand my offers to be lots of different things, right? It wasn't just voice lessons. There's the Whole Voice podcast. And then there's the meaning of what the whole voice is and various different modalities in helping you experience expressing your whole voice. So it was really cool because it allowed me to teach all of the things that I believe in that go beyond the voice. And it was all under this umbrella of a different name that was not my name, right? So that can be a really big consideration for you in terms of how you want to expand your creative potential under your brand. That kind of rhymed. Expand with your brand. Expand with your brand. Expand with your brand. Okay, let's move on. So I actually just want to give you a clear-cut pros and cons comparison that we can use to compare having a business name with our name in it and then having a business name that doesn't have our name in it. But I want to give you one other perspective to think about. That was something that also helped me in my decision-making, switching over to the whole voice. And that is looking at voice lessons in the market of self-care and wellness, because that is why people buy voice lessons. It's because they love to sing and they want to feel good. They want to feel confident. And that's all part of self-care and wellness, right? So we can look at other markets and industries who are also offering one-on-one services that are in, let's say, even similar pricing ranges. And when I'm thinking about that, my mind immediately goes to chiropractor, acupuncture, masseuse, right? Things that are roughly the same amount in terms of the hourly rate. And I'm specifically looking at the names of their businesses. Very rarely do I go to a chiropractor that is Allie Tyler Chiropractor Services, right? And same with a masseuse. And same with an acupuncturist. In fact, it would kind of be a little bit creepy now that I think about it. It's usually something along the lines of Like my last chiropractor was Rise Chiropractic, and I go to Ganesha Healing for my acupuncture, right? So, I mean, that's not always the case. Sometimes we get a word of mouth referral and it is Dr., whoever, depending on whatever the service is, but it is just an interesting observation. Very rarely do I see businesses name their business after themselves. So, I don't know, for what that's worth. Just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, now let's take a look at comparing these two things. And we're going to do it very, very clean cut, pros and cons list, super simple. Here we go. Pros and cons of having your name. So let's say I keep Allie Tyler Voice Studio for the purposes of this example. Well, it's really easy to remember if you stand out, right? If you have a personality online and you stand out and you've got your jam going, that's awesome. You are the face of your business, and that is very easy for you to stand out with, and people will easily remember your name. It's also just easy in general, and I think that if we're really getting to the deep root of this, I truly do think that a lot of us, I'm going to be real right now. A lot of us name our businesses our name because it feels comfortable. It feels safe. It feels easy, right? We don't have to think about growth and expansion. It's just simple. And look, that's not a bad thing. It definitely is a pro. It's also a con, right? If we become too comfortable, if that is a cue for us that, it's like we're playing it safe and we're not growing in the way that we want to grow our business. But in terms of it being a pro, it is simple. It's easy to remember. It's easy to set up. It's easy, period. Cool. The cons with it is that there are a lot of names and there are a lot of sing-withs. You know what I'm talking about? The Sing with Allies, the Sing with Chelseas. My God, how many Chelseas are there? If you're a Chelsea listening to this, I don't know what happened. Like all of a sudden, Chelseas just emerged into the voice teacher world, and now there are so many of them. I always laugh about it with my husband because I'm constantly talking about all these different Chelseas that I work with. I don't know what is going on with that. But anyway, there are a lot of Sing withs. There are a lot of Chelseas. Sorry, Chelsea. And another con is that, I'm going to be real again, it is highlighting you as the teacher and not your ideal student. And that's really important, especially when it comes to your brand messaging. You really want to be focusing on your ideal student being the hero and not you being the hero. And we talk a lot about this inside of the Voicepreneur program and how to really shift your language around that. But it's just something interesting to note that if everything is about you, the Allie Tyler Voice Studio, and then you go on and you make all your products with that same name, Allie Tyler Warm-Up Tracks, Allie Tyler Singing Program. Like if everything has your name in it, that's inadvertently making you look like you're really kind of highlighting yourself a bit more than you're highlighting the transformation that you give to people. And remember, all that your ideal student wants to know is what's in it for them. That's all we all want to know as consumers is what's in it for me. So it's just something to think about in terms of the messaging and how you want to highlight yourself, how you want to position your business, how you want to position your products, all of it. Another consideration that you want to think about when it is your name is hiring teachers. And that might be cool with you. That's totally fine. But if you do want to grow and expand your business and hire other teachers inside of your studio, do you want that to be all under your name or something else, right? Kind of tricky when it's all under your name, especially for the teacher. Like, I'm digressing here, but I do think it's an important point to make that if a teacher is being hired under a studio where the studio name is the main teacher's name, they're not as likely to stick around because they don't feel like they have choice and autonomy, and it feels just, I don't know, a little weird. You know what I mean? And I think you would feel the same way if you were in their shoes. So just something to think about. That's not always the case, but it is something worth mentioning. And the last consideration I wanted to bring up is that if your product is your name, Allie Tyler Voice Studio, Allie Tyler warm-up tracks, this isn't as marketable for people to say out loud. So let's say somebody asks someone, hey, what is the warm-up track series that you sing along with? I would love to purchase it. And they say, oh, it's the Allie Tyler Vocal Studio warm-up track series. They're like, oh, wow, that's okay. That's a lot, right? Versus it's the whole voice series. So just makes it a little bit easier for them to say it out loud and to be able to market your product. Now, if we're taking a look at the pros and cons of having a business name that is not your name, let's first look at the pros. A couple of things that are super awesome, as you've kind of already figured out, is that it highlights your mission, it highlights your method, your style, your transformation, your vibe, like literally whatever it is that you want it to be. The name itself represents that. It is a mirror of what you stand for. And that is super awesome and feels really cool. It also really does help give clarity to the people that are interacting with your brand. Like they can tell immediately what type of teacher you are, what you stand for, and whether or not they want to work with you. And that's great. And because of that, this allows for an umbrella of growth, right? You now have growth opportunities with the types of products and offers and services and programs and content that you are creating under this name. You also have this opportunity of growth with hiring teachers. So let's say that you have a specific brand value that is part of your name. Maybe it's something like My Brave Voice, right? And you're like, My Brave Voice, the values that we have are confidence and bravery and courage and performing and doing things that are hard. You're going to go out and find teachers that align with that mission. You're going to go find people that maybe even are specialists in these types of things, right? And that can fall under that umbrella. So that's really cool. And then, of course, it feels good to share it out loud with our actual mouths. So let's say you're on a podcast and you want to say your business name, right? Or if you are at a networking event, or again, if you have people buying your products and you want them to say your name out loud, that's also a lot easier to do when you have its own entity of a name. And yeah, it really just allows for more growth in general. Now, of course, there are cons to this. The big one is really the domain name, like getting the actual domain, getting it trademarked. You don't have to get it trademarked, but you can if you want to. If you're like, oh my God, this is the thing. I absolutely am married to this name. Then yeah, you definitely want to go and get it trademarked. But I think truly the hardest thing is just thinking of a name and feeling like you are committing to it, right? It's hard to think of a name. It's hard to find the right thing that is not already taken and that represents who you are and what you stand for, because you got to do a lot of inner work, right? You got to do a lot of work to figure out those types of things. And that's, I don't know, it takes work to do work. So I hope that it helps to hear kind of the pros and cons of each. And I really am super curious if this inspires anything for you in terms of a change. So I do want to address one last thing, because I think there are a few of you who are going to ask this question. What about initials? Okay, so if you are using initials in your voice studio, let's say instead of Allie Tyler Voice Studio, I say ATVS. I think that that's kind of like a nice in between. You know, it's sort of like its own brand name, but it's sort of like it's your name. I don't know. It really depends on, yeah, I think the logo and how much you use the name and how much you're referring to the name. That stuff is really important. It's totally an intuitive thing. So if you have been using initials and that's working for you, that is great. Just make sure that you are consistent with using those initials in all of your branding. Ooh, I just thought of a cool idea too. Maybe you want to steal this. This literally just came to me as I'm recording this. You know what would be really cool is if you took your initials and you also somehow creatively applied it to your brand mission, maybe your values or, you know, what you stand for, or I don't know, something like that. Like if you're like, if I do ATVS, maybe A stands for, oh gosh, now I have to actually think of something. I don't know, awareness. A stands for awareness. T stands for transformation. Okay, this is not working for my initials, but maybe it would work for yours. Do you kind of see what I'm saying? Maybe you can like intertwine it in some way. I don't know, just an idea. Do what you want with it. So I hope that is helpful to hear some pros and cons of each. And I'm really, really curious what your name is, if you are going to change it, if you have any phrases or ideas that have been kind of lingering in your atmosphere. I promise I won't steal them. You don't have to share them if you don't want to. Maybe just share that this resonated with you. Definitely take a screenshot of this episode and tag me over at The Voicepreneur to let me know. And if you are interested in learning more about the resources that The Voicepreneur provides, such as the free training on how to make passive income as a voice teacher. So if you are one of those teachers that does want to expand and grow your business, you definitely want to go and check out that free training. There's also the Voicepreneur program, which is open for enrollment. All of these links are inside of the show notes. So go stalk those out. If you have any questions, my DMs on Instagram are always open for you. Thank you so much as always for listening to another episode, and I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day. Take care.